Good morning. This is Art Jones and Galen Bingham. I am Tao Marketing and he is Leaders Residue. And we are here today talking about what's all the fuss about being self-aware. This is really a leadership discussion. And why leadership is important to me is because I'm Tao Marketing, and Tao Marketing is about finding alignment and harmony between you and the markets that you're in service to. Because I believe each of us as founders, employees and businesses have an obligation to lead the communities of people that we are seeking to reach and bring products, services, and solutions to. So that's who I am. And my co-host today is Galen Bingham. Galen, introduce yourself.
Absolutely. My name is Galen Bingham, and I am the primary principal of Leadership Residue, LLC. It's a leadership development firm. We do a lot of public speaking and individual executive coaching, just really a passion around accelerating the success for motivated leaders. We believe that every success and every failure begins and ends with leadership. And so my focus is around helping leaders create the kind of inspiration that will last even well after they're gone, so that they don't have to work as hard managing the farm.
Fantastic. That's so I'm excited about this conversation. Anytime I get to talk leadership with Leaders Residue, I'm excited because I know there'll be some gems that I will take away that will help me accomplish more in my quest to be a better leader. And this question of what's all the fuss about being self-aware, there are a lot of buzzwords in the market space today. I mean, we hear words like leadership, like authenticity, and, we can just go down the line. But this notion of self-aware, I think, is one that goes underserved. We hear about authenticity, which people try to present a certain way. Whereas I believe that self-awareness is more looking in the mirror and really getting a bead on what's going on inside before you reach outside. And Galen, share what your thoughts are on this notion of self-awareness for leaders.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's at the cornerstone. I think it is. It's probably possible to lead without having a firm understanding as to who you are. I just don't know how to get there without that understanding. I always like to start with my man, Aristotle, who said that knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. So before you can, to your point, before you can try to do anything external, I believe that you have to have a firm understanding as to who you are, kind of what's your platform is what I usually call it. What's your leadership platform? Where are you leading from? And from there, you can set an example and try to inspire other people and do all the great things that leaders do. But if you don't know who you are, you're almost like a raft drifting on the ocean with really no anchor.
So if expand on this idea, because I think it's an important one of having a leadership platform, having and I use the analogy of if we were architects or if we were contractors building a home, we would start with a solid foundation. We'd make sure the ground was solid and bedrock, and then we'd form up the foundation to make sure that we were going to pour something that we could build upon. And you called it a solid platform for leaders. Expand on that, because I think that's an important idea.
Yeah, for me, I mean, when you think about a platform, I almost liken it to a political platform. So when you are interviewing candidates or when you're evaluating candidates, you want to understand what they stand for. You want to understand their position on various topics so that you can decide whether or not you're going to join their campaign or follow their cause. And therefore, a candidate, when they're running for any office, they've got to be very clear around about how they stand on these topics that they believe to be important. And if they don't have a solid platform, if they don't have this anchor document, then it's going to be very easy to see them waffling and changing kind of with the tide, and whatever seems to be public opinion, they tend to follow that public opinion, and therefore they lose credibility. So a leadership platform is just that same thing. It's a document that says, this is what I believe to be true about these critical topics, these critical elements of leadership. There's a part of it that's aspirational. This is who I'm trying to be. And by definition, it's supposed to be a bit of a stretch so that you know where you're going. You've defined what leadership means to you. And at that point, you're not listening to Stephen Covey. You're not listening to Marcus Buckingham. You're not listening to Galen Bingham. You're listening to this platform of who you said you wanted to be in certain leadership situations. And in the work that I do, that's usually the first thing that I encourage my leaders to do is let's get very clear on what their individual platform is.
Yeah, that platform is just like the contractor and the architect, as you said. If you don't have a solid platform, that roof is going to be kind of unstable, and your structure is not going to withstand the weather and the tornado and everything else. So, and that's what the marketplace is like, very much like the weather.
You know what? And let me expand on your architect's analogy, because I think it's perfect. I mean, without doing that work, right? Because drawing the blueprints, that's not sexy, right? And
that's the hard work, really.
That's the hard work, and it's not sexy. And when people look at the end product, they don't think, wow, that must have been some blueprint, right? They look at the paint on the outside. They look at the light fixture. They look at the chrome on the door, and without doing that architect's work of drawing up the blueprint, you put all of these nice decorations on the outside of your leadership, and it's not really based on anything. It's not founded on anything. And to your point, the first stiff storm, because let's face it, the storm is coming. The first stiff storm, the first stiff wind, everything that you thought you needed and thought was important is just going to get blown away.
Yeah, and it makes me think of Abraham Maslow is kind of why I use that architect and contractor analogy for the foundation, because Maslow has the hierarchy of needs and talks about what's important, food, shelter. He also has another saying that says that if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And so if you just have the toolbox over here and you're going to build a house, you take the hammer and you take a bucket of nails and you say, okay, I'm just going to slap this wood together. I think this is how it goes. This should be good. However, if you take the time to get your pencil out and maybe a wall, a desk, conference room size desk, and you start writing down all the mechanics, first looking at the foundation of the ground that I'm going to build on. Is it stable? Will it withstand the test of weather and time? And then I say, okay, the foundation the earth looks good. I'm going to build here. Do I need concrete? How much reinforcement in the concrete do I need? Because I look at the pyramids and say, pyramids look like they just magically appeared, maybe by aliens or something like that. But the reality is, even if the aliens did it, they had to have a plan. And all the labor and all the years that it took to erect all the beautiful structures on the planet, absent a plan, none of them would have stood the test of time. And although leaders, as humans, we only have a short span of time here on the planet, the more time we invest in building a solid platform, as you say, building a strong foundation for us to stand on, the more introspective we become in that planning before we reach outside of ourselves, I think the more success we can endow ourselves with And that's the hard work, because Revel, excuse me, asked the question. Someone recently said in a blab that most people know who they are. They just don't want others to know. What do you say? What do you think about that, Caleb?
I think that's the scary part, right? And usually that's the challenge in the work that I do. I spend a lot of time helping executives. Well, let me tell a real life example. I spent some time with a major QSR, quick service restaurant, fast food chain out of the Northeast, and spent time with their entire leadership team. And then they wanted to spend some individual time with me, and they traveled to where I am, and it was like 4 of them. And we spent literally 2 days working on their leadership platform, just sharing tools, sharing things for them to think about and say, okay, now at the end of the day, how will this affect how you would like other people to experience your leadership? And let's write it down. And so we did that. And I said, well, the real challenge now is, will you share this with your organization so they can hold you accountable to your words, right? They're not holding you accountable to what they think needs to be in place. They're not holding you accountable to, what all these other great thinkers said a leader needs to be. They're holding you accountable to your words. And that's the scary part. And each of those executives did that work. And the way that I can tell that it was real, and this is what I go for. When you are sharing your platform, if your voice cracks a little bit, if you hesitate, if you have second thoughts at the last minute that you should share this particular line that you've written, then I know that it's real, because I think Revel used the word transparency. That's about being transparent. And that's supposed to be a little hard, because we all have, I think Susan Scott, the author of Fierce Conversations, she talks about the fact that we all wear a mask, and we all do the corporate nod from time to time. Yep. And what this is encouraging you to do is to take off the mask, to not do the corporate nod, and say, hey, look, this is where I'm staking. This is where I'm putting the stake in the ground. Whether I'm right or wrong, this is who I am. And that's scary.
It's scary. And I think it's to Revel's point. They don't want others to know who they are. I think in some of the work that I do, it's difficult for them to find out the truth of who they are. I mean, there's that. I wish I had a mask here, because there's that mask that they want to present to the world. I'm tall, handsome, and, I'm smart and witty. But the reality is something else. And sometimes we discount the reality as not being as powerful as the persona that we want to present. I want to present like Steve Jobs, but I'm Arthur Jones. Right. So my challenge is, how do I wear black like Steve, right? And I got black jeans on, if that was my case, and sneakers. I wear it all the time. I'm trying to be Steve Jobs. But there was only one Steve Jobs. I can model that behavior, but am I being true to who I am? Am I standing on solid ground trying to be someone else? And I believe that when we find that source of our self-worth, the things that we value in ourselves and the things that other people value in us. And this brings me back to that Johari window, that 4-quadrant panel that's very much like the screens on Blab, where it's the things that I know about myself and the things that people know about me. And the one key is things that I don't know about myself that other people do know about me. And that can be a double-edged sword. In some instances, that's bad behavior. In other instances, when you seek to understand how the world sees you, you might discover that the world sees your superpower long before you do, right? You might discover that you always knew that it was there, but you never wanted to own it. But everybody said, you need to step up to the podium. You need to, take command. You need to. and you're always like, I'm not worthy. That voice, on this side, all your friends are saying and your colleagues are saying, step up. You've got something special. And over here, you've got that little voice inside that's saying, no, you're not good enough. You were always the last one picked for dodgeball. How can you do this today? And that complexity that goes on in terms of our own perception of who we are, in the work that I do, I'd like to it's kind of like mining for gold or mining for diamonds, because each one of us is a diamond in the rough. And the opportunity is for us to chip away, to let that brilliance shine out. The opportunity that we have is to make the commitment, to make the commitment to dig for those gems that I like to call our superpower, what makes us remarkable, our why. All of those things live deep inside of us, and we get rid of all the stuff and allow those things to be seen by others, but most importantly, to be seen by ourselves. That's when we begin to own it. And that's when we can then begin to plan to build that foundation for those ideas and those great skills and aptitudes that we have to go forth and lead. I have my temperament is I believe a lot of things anecdotally, because we've always believed that this is the way it was. But, I'm a technologist, so I really love how science now proves for us what we always imagined was the way things were. And, I defer to Forbes magazine and Harvard Business Review, because I think that's where the smart people go and are allowed to pontificate, and they continue to stay there because people embrace what they say and how they say it. And there's an article that I pulled up from a few years ago, actually, but it really offers a novel idea. It says how leaders become self-aware. And I'm just going to read this one paragraph. A plethora of people, courses, and self-help guides profess to lead you by the hand to the promised land of business success, period. The problem is that things are always messier than the how-tos make them out to be. This is why it's often better to consider less the specifics and more the principles and qualities that bring success. And we're talking about qualities like self-awareness today. It's the heart, the gut, the intuition, and luck is in there as well. And these are things that go underserved in some of the very principled books that are written about do this, do this, do this, and really telling you how to deal with the outside world, but really not giving you any guidance on how to deal with all the strength that we have inside of ourselves. And self-awareness to me is really intuition and gut feeling, and the experience of tuning that like an instrument.
You said so many things just kind of in passing. You dropped these diamonds and then just kind of moved past them. So I'm going to back up a little bit and then get specifically to the question that you just asked, at least hopefully. Number one, I totally agree with what you said about, I think you call them diamonds, and then you're mining for diamonds that we all have. I call it, I had a friend of mine that said that we all have to find outlets to express our wonderfulness, so that we all have this wonderfulness inside of us, and we're all looking for outlets to express it. And I believe that, first of all, I believe that all of us were designed to be the greatest in the world at something. And therefore, our job and our life mission tends to be to find that thing, to find that something that we're destined to be the greatest in the world at. And if we don't find it, if we live, our 80, 90 years on this earth and we don't find that thing, then not only do we miss out, but the world misses out, because the greatest in the world has not expressed that thing that they were the greatest in. I believe also, and this is something else that you hinted at, that the thing that stands in our way is fear. And we tend to be, and I include myself in that we tend to fall into one of three traps of fear. We tend to either be afraid of failure, and that one's kind of obvious. You know, I show up and I hope I do a good job, and I'm not quite sure that I'm ready or I'm worthy to step into this space. And so I've got a fear of failure. We also have, I believe, a fear of looking foolish while we're learning. And the example that I often go to is, you know, Tiger Woods for a while was like killing the PGA, and he would win just by showing up. And he decided that he was going to change his golf swing. And for a period of time, he couldn't do anything right, although it would have been so tempting for him to go back to his old golf swing just so that I can hit this ball, you know, the 300 yards that I need in order to get into position A, right? It would have been so tempting for him to do that. But he decided to stay with this learning process, although he was looking foolish during the learning process. And that's a temptation. That's a fear that we all tend to fall into. And then the last one, which sounds so strange. Every time I say it, it sounds so strange. But I think that we can also have a fear of success. And the fear of success usually shows up in that if I step into my greatness, I may lose some friends along the way. I may make other people feel inferior. And wow, if I really step into my space, art might not feel comfortable around me anymore. And I really like art, and I want art to feel comfortable around me. So instead of playing to 9, I'm going to play to 6 so that art feels good about art and art still wants to hang out with me. And that's a problem for a couple of reasons. Number one, I'm not playing to my full potential. And then number two, I'm not challenging art to play to his full potential, because then art believes, well, to hang out with Galen, all I have to do is stay around 7, and I can hang out with Galen instead of, iron sharpening iron, that kind of thing. So you just kind of, you drop some of those diamonds and then kind of moved on because they were nothing. But I think that's really at the core of this thing about being self-aware, because if you're not aware of your blind spots, if you're not aware of those areas that you tend to slip into, if you're not careful, then it's going to be even more challenging and might even delay the inevitability of you living in your greatness.
Yeah, and it's, I've been through that process in so many different ways, whether it's being an athlete and trying to run faster and get a better PR, jump higher, run longer. All of those things are when you're competing against the clock. It's sometimes easy to drive yourself forward because the clock is your adversary. You want a faster time. When you're competing against accepting yourself, it's so much harder. And I think that's where the fear comes from. And the fear and the fear of success, I think, are you can say them in the same sentence, in the same breath, because, I could always aspire to running faster. But when it came to aspiring to accomplishing more for the people that I wanted to be in service to, it meant stepping into some greatness. It meant me embracing more of who I already was. And for me, I could look deep and say, yeah, okay, you've got that, but are you sure you want to present that way to the world? I mean, will you be accepted? There's so many other people that you admire that do this kind of work, that how can you step into the kind of greatness that they've already ascended to? And it took for me, it's almost like I couldn't pull myself up and out, right? From inside out. It really took colleagues and friends that said, look, don't worry about looking foolish because you're already doing this. I don't know how you don't see it or sense it or feel it. And so it took external coaching, and this is just the power of coaching, to recognize what was already there for me to step into being more me, being more Arthur Jones, being more Art Jones, being more, the Tao of marketing. And when I did, it was almost like a supernova going off. Like, wow, I like it here. I wish I had arrived sooner. And I think in the work that I do, and I'm sure Galen, in the work that you do, when you see a leader, an executive leader, that you see all of the power that they bring to the party, but they have not yet stepped fully into it. And maybe they need some polish, maybe they need some tools that they don't currently have, maybe some practices that they could do that perfect practice to feel more confident to step in. But when they do, to see the supernova go off in someone else where their eyes are bright and they really step to the podium with confidence and deliver the speech that's kind of timeless, and that you had a hand in that, it's a fantastic feeling for them as well as for me. And I think that's why I do what I do. But here's a question, because as you were, often I always have my pad and my pen out when I'm on a blab with Galen, because he'll say what I say differently, and I like the way you say it, so I write it down. But as we were talking about this notion of having fear, this notion of looking foolish, and this fear of success and not stepping into their greatness, what's your thoughts on the psychometric tests like Myers-Briggs or DISC or 360i, or, there's a whole plethora of things that will help define for us, give structure to ourselves, that allow us to begin using that structure that's perhaps our platform to stand on. What do you think? That's what I think. I think that my Myers-Briggs, and I'm an ENTJ, right? I've used that as foundationally. I can take each piece of that Myers-Briggs and I use it to demonstrate to myself how it helps me accomplish more.
But
that's my perspective.
I think at one point I was probably the most assessed person in the world, because I'd taken all of us. So, my perspective is no one assessment is good, but all of them together are very, very useful. Because I've gotten into trouble personally when I've taken, I can't remember which one it was. I took one of the assessments, and based upon the feedback, I got so engrossed in the feedback that I was starting to miss the big picture that it was trying to tell me. And so it wasn't until, again, I kind of lined all of these assessments up and said, okay, what are the key themes that are coming out of this? And is it useful? Does it help me get to the kind of leader that I'm trying to become? Yeah. Is it useful? Because not all information is useful. Some information is just noise, right? And so it wasn't until I saw everything in a broader perspective that I could make sense out of it. And I think in that regard, it was absolutely helpful then.
I think I used them in the same way, Galen, because I think, I had Myers-Briggs, I've done DISC, I've done a lot of the FIRO-B, I've administered them, right, and helped team building with them and so forth. But I think the thing for me was there was somebody I really respected, this executive coach that we were doing some barter in coaching, me on marketing and them on executive coaching, and they were a clinically trained psychologist, so that gave gravitas to what they brought to the party. But then their focus was the thing called the 260i. I was like, I never heard that one. And what it was as a body of, I think, 2,300 CEOs had been assessed using this tool. And here's how they stacked up. And so when you took the 260i, it was, how did you stack up against these CEOs? And so because I respected this person and they administered this test and then they helped to analyze it for me, they were like, wow, this says exactly what I thought. You're just a brilliant CEO, and this is where you stack up with all the CEOs on the planet. I was like, so you mean I'm not stepping into my greatness? That's not what they were saying. They perceived I was already there. What for me it said was that, okay, psychometric test and all these other things that I've taken say the same thing, yet you have not yet strode into being who you already are. Accept it before it leaves you. Accept it before it siphons off and goes somewhere else. And I think it was the aggregation of all of the tests that I had taken that all signaled the same thing. Yet I was wallowing over here when the test said I was supposed to be here. So it was like a magnet. It just drew me to my true self, I think. But I think there's also the challenge of becoming too analytical and letting the test kind of anoint you.
Oh my, yes.
And not doing the work to go along with it, right? Because you can be annoyed. I could sprinkle some water on you and say, okay, you were like a CEO, you score very high. And then without doing the work and continuing to sharpen the steel, you can lead yourself into a very bad place.
Yeah,
Still
I think you're absolutely right. I think you're absolutely right. I think there has to be, if you look at all great athletes, if you look at all great leaders, I think the same thing also applies. But with athletes, you tend to see it more easily. They all have this desire to get better, right? They all have this work ethic that carries them through. They have an enormous talent, but they have a crazy work ethic. And if you look at the Michael Jordans of the world, the Tiger Woods of the world, if you look at the Wayne Gretzky's of the world, all of the people that we designate as being great athletes, the talent is undeniable, but the work ethic is almost crazy. It's almost manic. And I think that the same has to be true regardless of the field that you're in. If you are a painter, if you're an artist, the way you get better as an artist is you've got to have this desire to get better, right? I can't give that to you. When I played football in the sixth grade with like every other kid on the block, right? And I had a football coach, and I tend to lock on the things that people say, and they usually don't even mean anything by it, but I find meaning in it and I lock onto it. And I've kept this thing since the sixth grade. And after he had taught me all of the skills, he had taught me all the things, all the techniques, all the things I need to do. I still wasn't quite getting it right. You know, I was trying all that stuff. And one thing he said to me is, he said, son, you've got to want to hit somebody, right? He's like, you know how to do it, but if you don't want to hit somebody, I can't give that to you. And I think the same thing is true for being great at whatever it is. You've got to want to be great. That's not something, you know, one of the quotes that I put in one of my books is you can be good by happenstance. To be great requires a decision, right? And I think, you know, everything that we've been talking about is kind of consistent with that. You know, one of the questions that you put up, or the comments that you put up from Revel, I think is a great one. And I've got a point of view on it. She said, is that a fake it till you make it attitude? That's not really knowing who you are, though. It's kind of, unless she's misunderstanding it. I do believe that you've got to kind of, and I don't call it fake until you make it. I call it, you have to act as if. You have to act as if. Dressing for success.
It's kind of like dressing for success.
One of my favorite athletes of all time is Muhammad Ali. And Muhammad Ali used to say all these crazy things about how he was going to win this fight, and he was the greatest, he was the prettiest, and all this stuff. And then when you read his biography or watch any of the videos on him, he will tell you that he was really scared. He was really not sure of himself. And so a lot of the talk that you heard was him talking to himself, and he was acting as if he was the greatest heavyweight of all time. He was acting as if he was too fast to be hit. He was too pretty to be defeated. He was acting as if. And I think if you do that enough, you start supporting your subconscious in a way that you ultimately do become, or at least you get closer.
I think that there's a woman that was at PwC, a very successful consultancy. She was a very successful consultant, but then had made so much money and gotten tired of consulting that she stepped out of that and became a school teacher. And as a school teacher, she went into the classroom and decided, and it was an inner city school she went to, and she was like, some of the kids with the highest IQs don't perform as well as some of the kids with lower IQs and less resources. What's that about? She left teaching and went to get a psychology degree at University of Pennsylvania. And now the psychology department is named after her because she determined that IQ wasn't the divining rod that points you towards success. What was most often is what she calls grit. And she's written a book on it. And it's Angela Duckworth is the author. And the book is called The Power of Passion and Perseverance. And there's a TED Talk that she does. It's about 6 minutes long, and it talks about grit. And it's pretty amazing because it's what you're talking about with Muhammad Ali. It's what you're talking about that football coach in 6th grade was telling you. It's like, you can do this very well, but unless you really, really want to do it, have a passion for it, then you're just half-stepping, right? And I think, I don't know if this notion of grit and fake it till you make it are lined up in order. Like, here's fake it till you make it, and here's grit. If you marry the two, then you've got something special, because if I don't get calculus, but I'm going to fake it until I make it, I'm going to have grit and I'm going to hang in there, I will get calculus. And that's the faking it till you make it. And so I think maybe it's that metaphor of faking it till you make it. It requires explanation, because the word fake it has a connotation that says I'm cheating in some way. But when you marry that notion of assume the role, be the success you want to see in yourself, is a different way of saying fake it till you make it. But then employ all the grit you can muster, all the passion and perseverance to meet that goal. And I think for leaders that want to be better leaders without knowing why, they want to be better leaders because they can get in a succession plan and make $1.4 million one day. That's good. But I think the leader that is trying to become a better leader because the mission is to change something that's broken in the world, that's passion. And the perseverance comes from inside, the gut, the heart. The passion comes from, I know when I get the reins of this organization, when I take the responsibility to lead, I will fix that thing that's broken. And in my way, I will change that broken thing in the world, and the world will be better. That sounds kind of squishy and warm and fuzzy. The reality is, I think the world we live in today requires that kind of action from us, because that's the world we live in today. People want us all to care more. The days of greed is good.
Yeah,
that's gone. It's still out there. It's still out there, but it's not the dominant theme. It's not the song everybody hears as much as we did then. Today we hear a different song that says, the mass-produced thing is not as good as this artisan thing. That guy there made this thing.
I think you can always tell the real thing when you see it. I think you can always tell the real thing. You might not be able to articulate what's going on, but you can. I think our gut always tells us, hey, there's something different about this leader, about this cause, about this whatever. and I want to hear more. I want to learn more. That is hard to fake. I submit that that's impossible to fake. We would do well to find out what's our why, as Simon Sinek would say, is whether it's documenting your why, whether it's understanding your platform, whatever words you want to use to describe it. I think we would do well to understand that, because the arrows are coming.
Yeah. And if you're not willing to accept the arrows and slings, then you're not ready yet.
Been sitting on the sidelines.
Welcome, Revel.
Sidelines long enough.
Well, thanks for joining. And
this is going to be an amazing show now.
Too. I want to see that pretty face. I can only see a dark. There she comes. Hello.
Okay. Hi, guys. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Absolutely.
Hi.
Happy New Year. I hope you all had a lovely Christmas.
Welcome. Oh, yeah, I did. I have to say that I have a 1-year-old grandson, right? And we had a gathering of several families, but there was a basketball game on that I wanted to watch because it was a rematch of the NBA Finals, the Warriors versus the Cleveland Cavaliers. What I bought my grandson for Christmas was furniture like mine. So Granddad is sitting in a chair with his cup, and my grandson, the 1-year-old, is sitting in his chair with a sippy cup. And we're watching basketball. And his dad came in and said, "Are you guys going to join the festivities?" We're having a good time here. It was too funny.
That's a great
moment. That was great.
So Samantha, is it Boxer or Boxing Day for you?
It's St. Stephen's Day in Ireland.
What does that mean?
I have no idea. It just means that.
Okay.
It's just we like to put religion into everything over here. I don't know. Some saint. I actually don't know, to be honest. But it's called St. Stephen's Day, not Boxing Day here. It's Boxing Day in the UK, in Britain, but it's St. Stephen's Day here. But to be honest, all it is a day of gambling and drinking.
Yes.
My partner.
my grandmother was a Hardy, so I channel that.
My partner is a taxi driver, so today would be the busiest day for taxi drivers and pubs and for bookies and horse racing and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of people traditionally would go to the races today, and the weather is awful. It's rain and wind, and it's actually a really we had a Garda. We have policemen over here called Gardaí, and the guard dropped in from next door with sweets for the kids, and he was saying that it just the drink alcohol causes so much grief on Christmas Eve. Arguments over children, over who's having them Christmas. Oh, it's awful. Like people don't seem to realize, okay, there's all this lovely stuff at Christmas, but there's also a lot of people that have a hard time at Christmas. So, it's just to be aware, I suppose. I went to my AA meeting on Christmas morning. I didn't go to Mass. I went to my AA meeting, and it was lovely. And we had mince pies and tea, and it was a day of gratitude, really, for me. Of feeling grateful that my whole life has changed, and that we're in a warm house and we're able to sit down in a peaceful, calm, loving house and enjoy Christmas. So that was nice.
Nice.
Fantastic. Well, here's and Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to all. But I'm glad we have Revel and Samantha here on the Blab now, because I want to turn this conversation about self-awareness a little bit, and it goes to a survey that was done that's reported on Harvard Business Review of 17,000 people in a behavioral study that went to, here's the theme. Few executives are self-aware, but women have an edge.
Yeah.
Do you guys agree?
They have a stronger intuition.
Good. A good answer. It's a great answer because the survey says, what's that TV show where the survey says it's women show empathy as a strength. 33% of the survey participants, whereas men only 15% believe that. And the next category is demonstrate strong ability in conflict management. Women perform 51%, at 51% of women perform well in that category. Men perform at 29% in conflict management. Show skills and influence. And this one I was a little surprised at. Women show at 32%, men at 21%. But that's because of the empathy. And then the last one is are perceptive in self-awareness. And this I thought would be higher for all, but men only 4% of that 17,000, women 19%, which I thought that 19% would be much higher. But I think it's interesting because I've read over the last decade how a lot of the thought leaders on the planet said that the more successful management style, it used to be hire the guy that was 6'5" with the broad shoulders and make him the CEO, because it was authority. Standing tall, you could lead the 10,000 employees would look up to that leadership style. And today, in 10 years ago, at least when I became aware of this new ethos, was when the shift began to happen where the thought leader said men that are leaders and women that are leaders need to become more like women leaders, as opposed to women becoming more like men in the leadership role, which had been the trend. We all need to be channeling more of our yin temperament, which goes to this notion of showing empathy as a strength and not a weakness. Demonstrating strong ability in conflict management, which means that it's not 9-1 management, which was what it was in 1980. I've got 9 votes, you've got 1 vote, just do it. I'm the leader, right? And then show skills and influence. And I think this notion of skills and influence really goes to communicating. And when I think communicating, whether it's in 140 characters or whether it's in a 2,000 word blog post, it's doing your optimal storytelling to reach the heart and the gut of the person that you're communicating with. And then there's are perceptive in self-awareness. And I think what they're really saying in this, and this is the one that I thought would be much higher for both, is tuning into your gut and your heart as the compass that helps you in making decisions.
Well, for me, trusting my heart and my gut never worked. So I didn't have to go with that. But I think my sense is with women, they're willing to look on their past experiences and bring that into play when they're working with people. They're not afraid to say what happened with them, what's the truth about them. Whereas men, they often feel like they have to display this masculinity, this, and it comes into ego instead of being a person. You know, we're talking about self-awareness. Women, I think, are more self-aware of, they know their past, they know how they got to where they are. Sometimes they do wear the facade because they can't show as much vulnerability as they probably would or could. Because I was just on a blab last night where I was saying how women, they were saying that women are turning into men. And I'm like, well, women are getting out and having to create either a business or get into work, whereas many years ago, we didn't have to do that. Women didn't have to work. We expected the men to bring the money home. So now we are standing out there and we're kind of finding this balance between who we've been, who we are, who we need to be. And I think I think we bring more self-awareness to it, if that makes any kind of sense.
Well, I think, the old notion that somebody wrote a book many years ago, men are from Mars and women are from Venus, really kind of telegraph the temperament of the sexes, which I think is what that graph really is speaking to. Temperamentally, we are so differently wired. Men are from Mars. We're all about war and control and dominance. And women are from Venus, which is an entirely polar opposite in many ways. And the management style that we built up in the 20th century was all about Mars. I have 9 votes.
Well, it
you
comes
have
from
1 vote.
Sun Tzu,
Just
The Art of
do
War.
it.
A lot of that.
It was the carrot stick management style, and I think that a lot of the things that brought us prosperity in the last century, we've realized were concoctions and not our truth, and now we're getting closer to our truth and how we as humans want to be treated. And what our expectations are as members of the human race, that I don't want you to beat me over the head with a stick to motivate me to do something. I want you to tell me what our mission is, and I want you to embrace me as an integral part of the team that's going to help deliver this mission. And there's a story that is, I think it's told about JFK, and he's made the announcement that we're going to the moon, and he goes to NASA and he's meeting and greeting people, all the scientists and engineers that are going to make this great mission happen. And off on the side, he sees a fella standing with a mop, and the guy's holding a mop by a door, and he's just watching. So JFK, being the connector that he was, walks over to this guy.
Oh.
Uh-oh.
Okay, so Samantha, what's your view on this? Let's keep the show going.
Well, I want to point out that JFK was Irish descent as well. But
Great point out.
There you go.
Down the road here, actually, in Wexford, where I live. Look, I think that because I think women have an advantage over men in that we are more likely to talk to each other about our feelings and talk. Whereas men, it's kind of, or used to be seen as, well, I don't know, here in Ireland anyway, it's kind of seen as a weakness if you talk about your feelings. Sorry, Art, do you want to carry on with your story about JFK?
Oh, well, all JFK did was he walked over to that fellow that was standing with a mop by a door on the far side of the wall, and he walked up to him and he said, "So, what do you do here?" He said, "Well, I'm helping us get to the moon." So that gentleman did not perceive himself as the mopper of the floors. Mm-hmm. He was an integral part of the mission to the moon.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that happened in the 50s or 60s, I guess, but it's the temperament that we all have today. Mm. Tell me what the mission is and embrace me as part of the solution to attain that goal. And I will put all of my grit and passion into that mission. But that's what leadership is.
I absolutely agree with that. Another quote that I have here is the task of leadership is not to put greatness into humanity, but to elicit it, for the greatness is already there. And that's by John Buchan. But I think that I don't know. I mean, this whole idea about gender and leadership attributes, I think if you look at the most basic level, men historically have been the protectors, the killers, the warriors, go get it done by brute force. And that served us well when that was needed. I think today we are really needing more of a nurturer. We're needing people that can see what's going on and make a decision around how do you get people to do more of that thing that they are great at doing. And when you've got that as your need, then this whole idea of warrior, kill, protect isn't needed as much. That's a huge generalization, right? I just believe that today we're looking for people who can make it okay for me to be wonderful at work, right? And I think leaders do three things. There are three responsibilities of a leader, And if you do anything other than these three things, it's probably good, and you're probably being a good manager, but it's not leadership. Those three things that a leader does is they paint a very clear picture of success. They make it very, very clear what winning looks like. That's the first thing that they do. The second thing that they do is they remove barriers, and a barrier could be a financial barrier, it could be a resource barrier, it could be a training barrier, but they remove barriers. And then the last thing that they do, and the most important thing that they do, is they inspire others to take action. And if you do anything other than those three things, you might be managing, but you're not leading. Those are the three things that leaders do. And I think that today, nowhere in that definition is there this notion of make people do things. Right? I can't show up at your doorstep with a long trench coat and say, you're going to do this or else.
Right.
That doesn't really. That doesn't
jacket with chains around my neck. You know what I mean? That was a management style in the past. You felt threatened, and I think that we're in a much different place. Samantha, you wanted to say something?
Yeah. Another thing that I find, I've often been called a leader, but I never thought of myself as a leader. But then people have said that it's because I, like you said, inspire. And I encourage others to become leaders, and like I help build new leaders. So a leader to me is someone who actually makes new leaders, and I like that. I like the idea of, like, my mentor, for example, he encouraged me to do what I was doing because he could see that I could do this, and he always said, you are good enough, you can do this. And I think a leader encourages people to bring the best out in them. And a leader also listens, is a good listener. So they listen to suggestions and not criticism, but they listen to other ways of doing things that maybe, they're not just tunnel vision. They listen to others, and it could be someone, it could be the guy. Actually, the most important person, if you ever go into a hotel or if you arrive in Dublin Airport, who is the most important person to you? The air hostess who greets you when you get on the plane. The receptionist in the hotel, that is going to give you your impression of that company straight away, of Ireland straight away. So they have the most important job. And on Twitter and on Facebook, the person running that account has the most important job because they are the company and they're representing their values, their everything. So if that's no good and the girl on the desk is no good, like I did an event once, and I had people on the desk, and I went down to check everything was okay because I'm a bit of a control freak, and I went down to check was everything okay, and there was a woman sitting at the desk with a grumpy face on her, and I said, Jesus, I said, get rid of her quick, So I went in and I got the bubbliest girl that I knew was in there, and I said, right, Melanie, you sit there at the desk. And I said to the girl, actually, they need you inside. So I got the other girl off the desk because I wanted a smiley, bubbly, warm person greeting the people coming to the event, and that's what I wanted. And so I made sure that the person that people saw first was, and that's delegating to the right person as well. So you find who has good talents at what particular task, and you put them in that area, and you encourage them to maybe learn how to do the other ones.
And Samantha,
get them training.
What you just described is a strong sense of your own emotional intelligence, is the technical term, but it's your empathy. You knew that this person was going to be better at that job than that person, so you put the right person in the position. And, my business is the Tao of Marketing, where I help people with brand strategy and storytelling so they can get in touch with those parts of themselves so they can market and sell better. Because I believe that, and that's why we're having a leadership discussion, because like you, Samantha, and Galen and Rebel, we all build leaders and we all are leaders. But I think so many people in the blabosphere and the Twittersphere and online have gotten sidetracked by the sexiness of blab or the sexiness of Hootsuite or whatever the tool might be, and they begin using the tool as if it's a strategy. They're not leading, they're just doing. And this question of leadership, if this blab can help people connect with their own responsibility to accept the role of leader, right? Yeah. Then when they accept the role of leader, they have to embrace their own emotional intelligence and have to get in tune with their gut and their intuition. Because let's use Samantha, the tweeting goddess. If I'm on Twitter and I put 118 characters out in a video, if I don't have a sense of how people are going to receive that, people that are following me, I have no sense of empathy. Shame on me, because I'm just blasting stuff out into the fabric of the World Wide Web. But if I do know my followers and I have cultivated quality and not just massive quantities of followers, and I know who they are, when I produce content as a leader, using my leader mindset, I produce content that I know is in the right context for them, that they'll respond to. And each of us as a person doing business in the fabric of the World Wide Web needs to be our best leader and be more self-aware so we can tweet better, so we can blog better, so we can create better videos. And that's what I believe.
Well, can I tell you just what I've done tonight? I'm actually going to put the link into the chat, if that's okay. It's just a Twitter poll I put up tonight. I know that a lot of my followers are small business owners and a lot of them love Twitter, right? So I put up a poll. Would you vote for a politician who you had engaged with on social media? Would that make you vote for them, more likely to vote for them? I'll put it in a minute. But the amount of traction I've got from that is because people, there was 125 votes before I even came on, and that was after 5 minutes. Because I know that there's people, okay, like me, that either the kids have gone off to the other, a lot of them are separated as well. So maybe, I know that they're all sitting here like same as me on Stevens' day. They're either out or they're babysitting or something like that. They're looking a little bit bored, so they're going to have a little dabble into Twitter. I know, because they're the same as me. So I knew that this would be popular, and I knew it would be a good time to tweet it. So that's exactly what you're talking about. And I knew that this was going to cause conversation and debate. And it's really getting loads.
I think that that's what leadership is. And I think that because the tribe of people that are your community, you've accepted the mantle of leadership, and that accepting the mantle of leadership comes with the responsibility to lead. And it comes with responsibility to think deeply before you do anything. Yeah. Right. Because you just can't blast stuff off. And I think I look at my tweet stream sometime and I'm like, what was that? Or I read blog posts that I see in LinkedIn and I know that they're, and I also know that there's a fair amount of marketeers that are coaching people to get more likes and shares as the intention, as opposed to build communities that they know and want to be in service to because they know them and they know what they're trying to accomplish, which is leadership. So it goes back to Maslow's law, that not the hierarchy of needs, but the law of the instrument, where he said, if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And I can specialize in Pinterest, but I know what Pinterest can do. And I don't try to make it knit me a sweater, right? I mean, it can't do that. But there are people that will. So this blab and all of my conversations about leadership are trying to focus the attention on the role that each of us has to be better leaders. So whatever tools we need to use to reach the audiences that we serve, we can do it with leadership and that kind of authority and that kind of emotional intelligence.
Something that you said, Art, again, just kind of in passing, that I think is really, really important is it's about your intention. If your intention is to make a lot of money, if your intention is to have the title, if your intention is to have all eyes on me, that's going to come off one way in particular, right? But if your intention is to make the organization better, to make leaders better, to make, to advance this thought, I think that that's when you start doing something that you also said in passing, you start embracing your role as a leader. It's one thing to embrace the title as a leader. It's another thing to embrace the role as a leader. And I think you hit on that perfectly. And again, kind of dropped some diamonds and moved on kind of quickly, but I thought that was really, really important.
Well, speaking of dropping diamonds, I'm going to stop the recording because I never listen to a video that goes more than about an hour, and we're about an hour in right now. But before we do that, I wanted to just say, and I guess I kind of signed off with that notion of this lab is about leadership and self-awareness, which is about emotional intelligence, but it's to build better leaders because I think we all have the opportunity to lead. And if we're seeking to grow a community around our brand, we are leaders. And that's why I do these labs, and that's why I join with Galen and Samantha and Revel that all, I think, believe what I believe about leadership. So I'm going to sign off as I'm the principal consultant at Tao Marketing, and that's the art of marketing, but that TAO is an acronym, can also be the Chinese philosophy of the Tao, which is about alignment and harmony. And my mission as a leader is to help brands and businesses find better alignment and harmony with the markets that they're in service to. So that's what we do here at Tao Marketing. We help you gain alignment so you can lead better those communities of people in the markets that you serve. Galen, why don't you go next?
Yeah, so Galen Bingham, I own Leadership Residue LLC, and we believe that every success and every failure begins and ends with leadership, and it's just that simple. And so our focus is around helping leaders create the kind of inspiration that remains even after they're gone, so that they can spend their time not necessarily managing people, but lead them so that results can continue to come in without having to work incredibly hard all the time.
Fantastic. Thank you. Revel, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
My company is Bodacious Living, and I teach people to be bold, especially women to be bold and audacious, and be willing to become self-aware. Yes, Samantha. Self-aware, have some self-esteem and self-protection, be willing to defend their lives if and when necessary. So often I hear women say, I'm afraid to hurt them. Well, if you don't hurt them, they're going to hurt you. So you got to get the self-esteem to be able to say, you know what, me first. Samantha.
Samantha, you're up.
Well, I help brands engage better on Twitter and social media, and I like to help small businesses just by giving them tips every now and then, and hopefully like showing them how they can succeed like I have, because 3.5 years ago I was a lone parent on social welfare. So if I can do it, you can do it. So.
Well, fantastic. Thanks, everybody who's sitting here in the seats with me on Blab. We're here every Saturday talking leadership or some theme that helps us drive better businesses, build better businesses, and be better leaders. So that's our theme for Saturdays. Join us again. But bye for now. Peace.
Bye.